Everyone is saying that the 14 Plus has the best battery life.
With the best battery life ever in an iPhone.
I thought that too, but we were wrong, and I'll explain why, along with multiple surprises I found with this new budget large iPhone. I was surprised that after about 20 minutes of watching YouTube, the 14 Pro Max was still at 100%, while the 14 Plus was at 97%. And after about 35 minutes, the Max finally dropped down to 99%, and the Plus hit 96%. But I was curious if the difference because of ProMotion, which can drop the screen's refresh rate to match the video, really makes that big of a difference, or if Apple is calculating these phones differently, which I'll cover in just a bit. For the first half, I was on cellular, which is why I went to connect into the line to make this as real world as possible. And when I got to our office, I switched to Wi-Fi like I normally would. Next, I spent about a half hour going through emails, texts, and social media like I do most mornings, which caused the 14 Pro Max to drop by 7% from 99 to 92, whereas the Plus dropped by 6 to 90. See, most battery tests are fake, or at least done in a lab setting, which makes it easier, but I wanted to make the most real world battery life comparison I have ever seen. So I set up both phones identically using iCloud Backup, and I logged into all of my apps, which a lot of them use location services, background app refresh, Bluetooth, and more. I even paired an Apple Watch to each phone so I can get notifications through those, which felt really awkward having two watches on, but it helped me find a peculiar difference. For my next hour or so, I set both down and I got to work, and of course the Max's always on display stays on, which makes it much easier to see notifications that come up, but it does use more battery. I finished up with a 20-minute phone call, 10 minutes on each phone to make it perfectly fair, and during that time, the Pro Max used more battery life than the Plus, with both phones having the same 87% battery life after about 2.5 hours of being unplugged. What's really weird is that the Max would show every notification even if it came to the connected Apple Watch, whereas the 14 Plus wouldn't light up if I got the text on my watch or if it popped up on my computer. But for emails, both would light up, and I noticed that the 14 Plus lights up a lot brighter than the Max, but it also shuts off quickly, so I would have to periodically check to see if I missed anything, just like I would in the real world if I didn't have the always on display. This is one of my issues with most of the battery comparisons online. Now, I respect the amount of hard work and time, but those tests don't account for the always on displays, background tasks, or extra brightness, which people do make use of. After that, I toss both phones in my pocket, which turns off the always on display on the Max, and a bit later I headed outside to meet my family. And yes, I shot this 4K video clip on both phones, as for this test I was meticulous to do everything exactly the same on both, and when I got in my truck, the Pro Max had lost less battery, just 1%, when it's in your pocket and the always on display is off. Now, I use Google Maps for navigation, which uses the GPS and the cellular, which by the way, only the Pro Max with the A16 has the new more efficient Snapdragon X65 modem, which at times shows less bars but still has faster speeds, while at other times with 5G it has better reception than the 14 Pro, which uses the same modem from the iPhone 13s. When I arrived about 35 minutes later, the 14 Plus lost 25% more battery, going from 85% down to 73%, whereas the Pro Max was more efficient, going from 86 down to 77, which really surprised me because in this test, I was using auto brightness the whole time, unlike other people's comparisons, and I used auto brightness the whole time throughout this video, which is what most people do, and even Apple hides that toggle in the settings, whereas with Android you can easily find it. With that, the 14 Pro Max has that new display which can hit 2000 nits outdoors compared to 1200 nits on the 14 Plus. When I was setting everything up, I once again noticed that the 14 Pro series consistently has higher auto brightness in the same exact scenarios than the 14 line, which does use more power. Now, some people said that the iPhone will auto-calibrate to the brightness that I prefer after about a week or so, but it has been about 3 weeks and is still brighter than the older generation, sometimes too bright. The 14 Plus, on the other hand, was fairly good most of the time, just sometimes slightly too dark, and when either phone was too dark or too bright, I would adjust them to my liking, just like I would in real world use, but 75% of the time or so, I would just leave it as is, since even if the Max was slightly too bright or the Plus was slightly too dark, most people just wouldn't touch it. I'll go over how much of a difference that extra brightness makes, but first, if you are still browsing the open web, you should be protected by VPN, like our sponsor Private Internet Access, which basically changes your IP address and reroutes your internet traffic through an encrypted tunnel to hide and protect your online activity from your ISP, the network admin, and the government on all of our devices. So hackers can't see your keystrokes, passwords, access files, or internet activity, and the best feature is that PIA has 50 servers in 50 states, as well as many other countries, so you can access content that's not available where you live, or even watch a television premiere before it becomes available in your time zone. Private Internet Access is also the most customizable VPN on the market, and they're the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads, and they never record or store any user data. So go ahead and click the link in the description and pin comment to get up to 82% off and get an extra 3 months free. And don't worry, signing up is risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so check out PIA today. For the next few hours, I spent time with my family. My kids had jiu-jitsu, so I took some 4K videos as well as photos on both of the phones, and some of that time I spent checking in on emails and social media. We also went out to eat, so I was using my phone as normal, and for the photos I took, I remembered that the Pro Max has to do a lot more processing for photos and video with its 48 megapixel main camera, which drains more battery, and it did because the Pro Max dropped by 12%, whereas the Plus dropped by 10%. Afterwards, we headed home where I connected AirPods to both phones, and even though it is a pain, I synced both phones to play into separate ears, so while I was doing normal chores around the house, I could listen to podcasts. This time, the Pro Max lost 5% instead of 7%, likely because they were in my pocket with the always-on display turned off. Now it was time for a bit of fun, and I made sure that all of the settings were the same, and I had the HD graphics pack downloaded. Noah and I played COD Mobile for about 45 minutes with the displays at 80% brightness, and neither phones got too hot, but the Pro Max did use slightly more battery, resulting in a lead of 3% now. Even though the A16 is more powerful, I noticed that it does a good job with background tasks, likely because of its efficiency cores that are more powerful and more efficient, so the performance cores don't have to be used as often. For some late night productivity, I usually love to have videos open in the background while I get work done, and this time the displays are dimmer than usual, and after a solid hour and a half, the Pro Max drained 9% battery instead of 11% on the Plus. This is where I have to add that with the latest iOS update, which was installed on both, I have definitely been noticing better battery life with my 14 Pro Max, even though I complained about it in the past. I think a lot of it was just a really buggy version of iOS. Now I finished up the night with an HDR movie, which pushes the Pro Max more, and I set the phones down at 12:30 with a 4% lead on the Max. Now that is not a big difference, but to be honest, I thought the 14 Plus would be 10 to 15% ahead at this point because it does have a larger battery, a dimmer screen, and no always on display. When I got up 6 hours later, the Plus only drained 4%, while the Max drained 6%, and I did my usual routine starting with some reading, emails, social media, and then while I got ready, I listened to some more YouTube videos before heading out of the house, which dropped both phones by the same 15% by the time I left the house. I headed to a meeting where I used the phones for notes and scheduling, and once I got back to the office, we were under 10% on both. I left both of them on to keep up with stocks as well as social media, and the Plus started dropping like a rock down to 2%, and I don't think that it's only ProMotion. It seems like the Pro Max sits at 100% a lot longer and also holds up better under 10%. So I'm guessing that Apple has set up the battery drain indicator, the percentage, differently on both phones. And then just after 11, the Plus died, with the Pro Max having 5% battery remaining. So no, even without the extra power sucking features, the Plus does not last longer under real world use. But what shocked me was how much longer the Pro Max lasted. I used it to airdrop videos and photos, reply to some texts and emails, and it was still not dead. I set up a camera to record when it dies, and even though it was still getting notifications, it lasted until 12:15, about an hour and 10 minutes longer than the Plus. And you could say that this test wasn't fair because I didn't lock the brightness to the same level like many people do. I used the always on display and the other features, But even then, the Pro Max beat out the 14 Plus, and I thought my test would be giving a huge lead to the Plus where others lock it all down. I think what I wasn't expecting is that the new 4nm A16 processor uses a lot less power for those simple tasks that we usually do throughout the day, and it also sips power for background usage. That and the new modem practically offset the extra drain from the new display and features, which also means if you turn that off and you use manual brightness, the battery life difference will be even greater. So there you guys go. If you enjoyed this video, you like the real world type testing and the effort that goes along with it, click that circle above to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and check out one of those great videos right over there. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next one.